Have you ever felt that, living just seems harder for you than it does for others? Like there's this invisible weight, maybe, making even small tasks feel exhausting, as if something inside you just never really lets you rest completely. For a lot of us who tend to feel things pretty deeply, this can show up as this constant sense of dissatisfaction, a nagging feeling that life is always just a few steps beyond what feels comfortable. Arthur Schopenhauer, the philosopher, he observed this exact kind of pain. He believed that deep down, inside every one of us, there's this primal, sort of silent force, this really profound impulse that makes us endlessly crave more. More security, more love, more success. But here's the twist, right? This same force is what simultaneously steals our serenity. He called it the will to live. Think of it less like a simple end, maybe more like a relentless internal editor, always pointing out what's missing, what could be better. Even right after you've achieved something great, it's whispering, yeah, okay, but what's next? And it's from this constant tension, this gap between what we have and what we desire, that Schopenhauer thought much of our suffering is born. But what if there was a way to understand this rest better and, learn to navigate it, maybe make life feel a bit lighter, even with all its inevitable challenge? Schopenhauer, who often gets tagged as this philosopher of pessimism, actually proposed exactly that. His goal wasn't really to drag us down into sadness, but to offer practical relief, to help us make pain more bearable, maybe reduce its impact day to day.
Yeah, and it's fascinating how he found this common ground with Buddha. Both sort of started from that undeniable reality of suffering, didn't they? They both looked at it and said, basically, living hurts. But they believed that acknowledging that truth, facing it, is actually the first step toward finding wiser ways to navigate, existence itself.
Okay, so with that idea of this restless inner force in mind, let's dig a bit deeper into what Schopenhauer really meant by the will to live. Because this isn't just about the desires we're aware of, right? It's this deeper, incessant drive that's always pushing us forward. And it creates this perpetual cycle of wanting and then feeling dissatisfied. Schopenhauer's work was really aimed at making pain more manageable, especially for people who felt kind of crushed by life's relentless pressures. That constant demand to be happy, successful, admired.
And what's truly striking is how he connects this fundamental observation about our inner drive to, a universal human experience. Like Buddha, he recognized that living hurts. And I think it's important to stress this isn't meant to be cynical. It's more like a profound acceptance of reality. It's about facing that inherent discomfort head on, because it's only by really recognizing this truth, he thought, that we can start to find wiser, more sustainable ways to exist within it all.
Schopenhauer actually boiled down a lot of his thinking into what he called his 50 rules for happiness. But, and this is the critical point, these aren't rules for achieving constant joy or euphoria. Instead, they're more like guides for easing daily pain. He radically challenged our common ideas about what happiness even means.
He really did. He proposed this redefinition that shifts our whole focus away from chasing those highs and more towards skillfully avoiding the lows. For him, genuine happiness actually looks more like a state of tranquility,
Yeah.
Rather than those fleeting moments of euphoria. Think about the difference. Like the deep sustain your relief when a worry that's been eating you up finally lifts, versus, say, the momentary thrill of getting something you wanted. Often, that reduction of suffering brings a much more lasting sense of well-being than the brief pleasure of a game. Pleasure, by its very nature, it's fleeting, it passes. But that quiet calm that comes from reducing pain, Schopenhauer saw that as a foundation for inner balance.
And this insight, this idea about the futility of chasing constant pleasure, that's where his philosophy really challenges our usual way of thinking. He stressed that trying to accumulate pleasurable experiences as your main strategy for living well is just incredibly frustrating, because that relentless will he talked about, it just transforms every pleasure into something insufficient almost immediately.
Right. It's never enough.
Exactly. And it directly contradicts this modern idea that happiness means collecting, intense joys, perfect trips, achievements that make everyone else envious, those soap opera-like relationships. He saw that whole pursuit as a profound trap.
For Schopenhauer, true happiness lies precisely in stopping that internal discomfort, when the mind finally gets a rest from that constant feeling of lack. And this isn't apathy, like some might think. It's not about not caring. It's more like a deep serenity that lets you enjoy the small things without anxiety, accepting the present just as it is, without needing constant ecstasy. It's a quiet contentment, really, a kind of liberation from always wanting more.
This pursuit of permanent happiness, which Schopenhauer called out as one of life's biggest traps.
Yeah.
It feels more relevant today than ever, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
He saw how expecting continuous joy just generates immense frustration, especially because life's inevitable setbacks, they end up feeling like personal failures.
Yeah.
Our modern performance culture, social media with its curated feeds of constant joy, they all seem to reinforce this idea that we should be happy all the time. And that just makes moments of sadness or even just boredom feel like some kind of weakness. It feeds shame and frustration, when we, inevitably don't feel perpetually joyful. But Schopenhauer invites us to something quite liberating, actually. Just accepting that life includes ups and downs. Trying to maintain continuous euphoria only makes the pain worse when the inevitable dip comes.
Right, because the fall is harder.
Exactly. Accepting that happiness is made of balance, punctuated by difficulties, that opens up space for a more realistic and frankly less anxious life. It's about learning to deal with challenge, not being constantly blindsided by them. So this redefinition of happiness gives us a new lens. And Schopenhauer built on that with another really crucial philosophical tool, the Kantian view. If happiness is about our internal state, then how much control do we actually have over that state? Kant had proposed that we don't see the world as it is, but rather as our mind represents it.
Mm-hmm. A lens analogy.
Right. And Schopenhauer took this insight and really leveraged it, not just to understand reality, but crucially, to understand our experience of suffering. If our mind is the lens, then changing the lens, how we interpret things, gives us direct power over our emotional state, even if the external reality doesn't change an inch. This ability to assign meaning to frame our experiences, it has transformative power. While we can't control a lot of external events, we absolutely can influence how we interpret them. Think about two people, right? They experience the exact same event, let's say being laid off from a job.
Okay.
One might see it as the end of their world, a total catastrophe, a personal failure. The other person, looking at the same facts, might frame it as, okay, this is a chance for a fresh start. Maybe liberation from a job they didn't even like that much.
Right. Same event, totally different experience.
Exactly. The external fact is identical. The internal experience is completely different just because of perception.
And it's important to clarify, this perception Schopenhauer talks about, it shouldn't be confused with naive optimism or just pretending that real suffering doesn't exist.
Good point.
It's more like a critical tool for mental resilience. It's about recognizing how our interpretation, our story about what's happening can either increase or reduce the weight of our burdens. It helps prevent pain from growing disproportionately, spiraling out of control just because of distorted thoughts running wild. It lets us ask ourselves, okay, hold on, is this situation truly as serious as my mind is making it seem right now? Or maybe, is there another way to look at this that might just ease its grip a little?
Now, among the paths Schopenhauer considered for dealing with this relentless will, the most radical was asceticism.
Ah, yes, the extreme path.
Right. This means basically giving up pleasures, refusing comforts, even withdrawing from social interactions, all in an attempt to sort of silence desires and find peace that way. He actually saw it as maybe the most effective way to escape suffering, logically speaking. But he also recognized that this extreme option was just impractical for most of us.
Yeah, not exactly doable for someone with a job and family.
Precisely. He even warned against trying to impose it on people, knowing that we generally need to work, care for others, live in community. It just isn't a sustainable path for the vast majority.
Yeah.
So he shifted his focus. He looked towards more realistic alternatives aimed at, the common person. His proposal is more about building a way of living that reduces suffering without demanding that we abandon all human satisfaction.
Finding a balance.
Exactly. It involves cultivating a life where hopefully suffering doesn't completely outweigh the joy of just being alive. Finding a middle ground, really, where we can reduce the weight of suffering without having to retreat from society altogether. It's about learning to balance our desires, recognize our limits, so we're not constantly dominated by the anxiety of achieving something that honestly might not even bring the peace we imagine it.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, Schopenhauer observes something interesting about aging and maturity. He noticed that as people get older, many realize that the pursuit of great happiness, those really big, intense highs, often brings more wear and tear than actual satisfaction.
Yeah, I can see that.
What seemed absolutely essential in youth, accumulating impressive achievements, getting constant external validation, often loses its shine. And values like stability, simple moments that offer comfort and meaning, they tend to emerge as more important. It's a kind of natural recalibration, perhaps.
He also pointed out that the intense pursuit of strong emotions, those peaks of pleasure, it generates even greater frustrations down the line because those peaks are invariably followed by sharp drops in mood.
The crash after the high.
Yeah, exactly. Think about that exhausting cycle of euphoria and discouragement for people who invest all their energy in impressing others or maintaining this perfect appearance of success. Even when they achieve their goals, the relief is often so brief. And it's quickly replaced by this new anguish of, okay, now I have to maintain this, or now I have to surpass it.
It never ends.
Right. This is why that classic metaphor, the healthy beggar and the sick king, it's so powerful. It illustrates how our inner balance determines well-being far more than any external circumstance. It explains why people who seem to have everything, materially speaking, can still feel this profound emptiness inside.
And Schopenhauer's core insight here, I think, is that the solution isn't about completely rejecting joys or pleasures. It's more about changing our focus. So instead of seeking those elusive, maybe difficult pleasures that often depend on external achievements, or that bring with them the fear of loss, we should prioritize the reduction of suffering, actively avoid unnecessary pain. When we do that, he argued, we find a more lasting serenity than when we're constantly chasing those exciting but fleeting experiences.
That sounds so simple, but it really goes against, well, almost everything modern society tells us, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. Advertising, social media comparisons, our whole performance culture, it all pushes the opposite message.
So, okay, how do we practically apply this stuff to our daily lives? Schopenhauer really emphasized that self-knowledge is foundational.
Knowing yourself.
Yeah. It helps reduce these sources of pain because it allows us to adjust our expectations, maybe value our actual strengths, and accept our limitations without seeing every single difficulty as proof that we're somehow, personally incapable. It's about understanding your own operating system, basically. And part of this is also the acceptance of reality. Just accepting that setbacks, losses, injustices, they're simply part of existence.
Right.
He argued this isn't conformism, it's maturity.
Right. It's not giving up, it's being realistic.
Exactly. And it frees up tremendous emotional energy. Energy you can then focus on what you can actually control. Your choices, your habits, your reactions to things. For you, the listener, who might feel pain quite intensely, this shift can be incredibly liberating.
It's also crucial, he thought, to differentiate between what we might call healthy desires like wanting to grow, to learn, maybe contribute something positive, and those desires that ultimately enslave us, like a compulsion for a specific external goal just because you think you need it to feel worthy.
That's the key distinction.
Yeah, recognizing that difference is vital for inner.
And in a world that constantly values productivity, often at any cost, Schopenhauer stressed that reserving moments of pause becomes indispensable. Just stopping to rest, to reflect, or maybe just to enjoy something simple. It can feel counterproductive, like a waste of time in our busy culture.
Definitely.
But for sensitive people especially, these pauses are essential. They help balance the mind and body. They let you reorganize your thoughts, process intense emotions without being completely overwhelmed or, dominated by them. It's like hitting a reset button.
Schopenhauer also really highlighted that mental and physical health are the absolute foundation for facing difficulties. Seems obvious, but maybe it isn't always.
Right, the basics.
Yeah. He observed that a lack of rest, poor nutrition, prolonged stress, they magnify problems. They can transform small setbacks into what feel like huge obstacles. Conversely, consistent self-care, getting enough sleep, eating reasonably well, maybe some exercise, taking those crucial breaks, it builds vital resilience. It allows us to deal with the exact same problems, but with far more serenity and clarity.
He truly believed our way of thinking directly impacts how we experience difficulty. So many of us live with this internal critical voice,
right,
that constantly reinforces feelings of incapacity or failure.
The inner critic. Yeah.
Learning to just observe your own thoughts, almost like a detached witness, and questioning them, asking, are these thoughts factual or are they maybe exaggerated? That's a fundamental step in reducing unnecessary suffering. You can literally ask yourself, is this thought helping me right now? Or is there another way I could interpret this situation?
And while many people believe that to avoid pain, you need to control everything, other people, circumstances, outcomes, Schopenhauer pointed out that this attempt at absolute control only generates more anxiety and frustration because reality, well, it always changes, doesn't it? It's inherently unpredictable.
We can't control it all.
Exactly. So he proposed accepting imperfection as just an inevitable part of the human experience. And this acceptance, it isn't resignation. He saw it as wisdom. And it's truly liberating because it transforms that feeling of powerlessness into a powerful sense of autonomy over what is genuinely within your reach, mainly, your own responses and choices.
And finally, especially for sensitive people who often overburden themselves by feeling this excessive responsibility for everyone else's well-being.
Oh, yeah. The people pleasers.
Right. Schopenhauer really emphasized saying no when necessary, defining clear boundaries, respecting your own pace. These aren't selfish acts. He saw them as essential attitudes for self-care, for maintaining that delicate balance we all need to navigate life. Schopenhauer saw philosophy not as some abstract ivory tower exercise, but as a practical tool. A tool for living better. He invites us to face pain head on without trying to mask it or pretend it isn't there. And we can accept that suffering is just a fundamental part of the human condition. We stop feeling shame for not always being perfectly okay.
That's a huge relief in itself.
It really is.
Yeah.
That recognition makes pain less frightening because it reveals that it's not some personal failure on our part. It's simply part of the rich, complex, sometimes difficult experience of being alive. So the key takeaways maybe for a lighter life, according to Schopenhauer, it involves this significant shift in focus, replacing that frantic search for intense, unstable pleasures with a quieter appreciation for simple satisfactions.
Finding joy in the small things.
Yeah. And accepting that existence includes pain, adjusting your expectations to match reality, not some fantasy, diligently caring for your mental and physical health. The basics matter, differentiating between those desires that truly nourish you and those that kind of enslave you.
Right.
And critically, cultivating those indispensable moments of pause, just stopping. These aren't grand gestures, are they? They're consistent, practical strategies for building a routine with less unnecessary suffering and hopefully more genuine tranquility.
Which really raises an important question, doesn't it? What does all this mean for you, listening right? Understanding that each small decision, from what you think about yourself to how you react when something unexpected happens, contributes profoundly to your daily. That understanding, it's about taking responsibility, even in an imperfect world, maybe especially create routines, relationships, habits that offer support, things that help you keep walking with, perhaps, a bit more balance and lucidity, even amid the inevitable pain that